one.
Welcome back to the Before Work podcast. We are excited for today. We're excited because we have some interaction with people that we are hoping to discuss. So this past week, Grant posted on Reddit.
I did indeed.
It's called a subreddit.
Yes.
Dude, I am so ancient when it comes to Reddit. I have just no
versed.
Reddit experience. I have none. But it's a pretty big. It's for discourse. Is that pretty much the idea?
Reddit's just, again, I always say, as what Reddit calls itself, it's the front page of the internet. By that, it's a place where all things internet can happen. So I mean, you have people who are in communities talking about niche subjects that they're into, like hobbyists of all kinds. But you also have people who talk about news. You have people who just want to have something funny. So there's tons of meme pages. I mean, memes didn't truly get invented on Reddit. I mean, there's all sorts of, not that we really need a history lesson on memes, but just like the idea of Reddit really made memes kind of come forward in many ways. I mean, it's just a place where a lot of interesting things happen. It's too big and broad to be able to pigeonhole it in any one direction.
Sure.
It does anything that anybody wants to do on there.
Now, has Reddit been taken over by business? So like YouTube has been taken over by completely by business, and it's a place to make money. Is Reddit there at all, or can it even be there, or no?
It's not really there. I mean, it definitely has. There's definitely business aspects to it. You know, it's not being made by somebody with lots of money that just throwing it away. I mean, there's advertising and there's stuff like that to make Reddit profitable for the people who own it.
But it's not glaringly a place to make money or to promote.
No, and like there's nobody who's concerned about the business image of Reddit because they are completely open to the fact that it can be used for anything. I mean, it obviously doesn't promote illegal activity. Like, you know, like there has been a fair bit of stuff that's on Reddit that people use it for things that can be more on the, you know, leaning towards the illegal side. I mean, you have like internet streaming and stuff of sports and stuff. There's lots of that, and they've been shutting that stuff down. Again, it's disappointing for people who might use it, but it's not really. Yeah, but anyways, we're getting too deep into Reddit. But yeah.
so we've decided, because we want to have more interaction with people.
Yes.
Based on fellow 90s kids and fellow 90s and early 2000s technology users, and see really what it is people have to say about the things that we discuss. We've been talking about for the past couple weeks the top selling video games of the 90s and 2000s. We decided to take last week's episode of the 2000s and post that on the subreddit Wii.
Yeah, the Wii subreddit.
Based on most of the best-selling games of the 2000s technically being many Wii games that were packaged with Wii systems.
Yeah.
So we posed the question. Do you have it up there?
Yeah. So I just threw it on there. And I left it just to see if anybody wants to. You know, it's not exactly a really hopping place for tons of discussion or content.
Let's say that there's like a couple hundred people on
daily. I mean, yeah,
daily.
They have they have like 25,000 people who are subscribed to it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that all 25,000 are combing everything on there. They might just be kind of seeing what's top of the day or see how it filters in on their feed. But put that on there, and we got a discussion going about whether or not Wii Sports should be even as an option of being on the list because it was packaged with the console. You know, because if you bought a Wii, you got Wii Sports, and it wasn't like
whether you liked it or not.
Yeah, whether you liked it or not. It wasn't a matter of like. I mean, they had later bundles where you could pick the bundled games, and I don't think Wii Sports was a guarantee on those. I think they had some other editions, like the Wii Fit editions and stuff that came with other ones, but they might have come with Wii Sports. This is where I'm not as well versed in everything Wii.
There was a while where they released different color Wiis, and the red Wii came with New Super Mario Bros. Wii.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was not always Wii Sports, but I believe every Wii that was ever sold came with a packaged game.
Yeah.
Which is pretty unprecedented compared to every other console ever sold.
Yeah.
Except for maybe the NES, which I think all NESs came with Super Mario Bros. And Duck Hunt. Possibly.
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either. That was a little before our time, actually.
Yeah. For us to be able to, it wasn't something we had to know just from being nerds and not necessarily from experience. So people just
what do the people have to say?
So things got started off where someone said that they didn't think Wii Sports should count, and I responded that I think that the game had its own merit to stand on. And then somebody else kind of jumped in and said that it was an artificially inflated number, since we were going off of sales as whether games were top or not necessarily about what people thought of it. It wasn't a matter of a judge on the subjective aspects of the game, but a purely objective number of sales. And I think that the points were pretty consistent, where it's not a matter of whether or not Wii Sports was a good or a bad game, but that it wasn't an option. Should
it basically, people are saying it shouldn't have the throne of the best-selling video game of the 2000s.
Yeah. It didn't earn that, because people weren't buying Wii Sports because it was Wii Sports, which, I mean, some people have, for some reason, probably bought a solo copy of Wii Sports used at GameStop for whatever reason.
Which, do you want to hear something absolutely insane?
Yeah.
Wii Sports, GameStop today gives you $11 in store credit, and I think $9 cash for Wii Sports. A game that there's 50 million copies out there. GameStop is giving you $11 in store credit. About a month ago, they were giving $16.50 for Wii Sports. I think for the sole purpose of rebundling, like making these retro packages and having Wii Sports be in the retro packages that they put together with used Nintendo Wii systems.
So yeah, they take Wii Sports and a Wii that they got on trade-in that didn't come with Wii Sports, rebundle it, and you get that initial package experience of Wii and Wii Sports, and
so how crazy is that? Like, it's so crazy that this game that is the simplest of games, without, like, there was it wasn't a franchise that had this long history. It was just this niche system, the Wii, because I still see the Wii is totally niche. It's not hardcore. It's niche. It was just this niche idea that 14 years later is still, like, you can still get money for it, and it still costs a decent amount of money.
Yeah. So I think I want to give a shout out to the guys who commented on here. So thank them for their input. Yeah, we have the first guy was Darth Hipstar, and then we had CB4_89, and then I like this guy, Toronto Badman. He was I just think that's a good name.
I like it.
I think that's because you never really think of Canadians as being bad people. He's the only bad Toronto person. Everyone else in Toronto just wonderfully nice. Actually, I don't think that's entirely true. I've seen the Toronto fan base
for the Raptors.
Well, for all of their sports. Yeah, they can be a bit critical. We'll just leave it at that. Yeah. But I think that I think what's also interesting is that Wii Sports did a good job of establishing the type of games that can be done on the Wii. Like they come out with this motion based console. I mean, it wasn't like the add-on packages that all the other consoles were offering, where you could add the Kinect or add the motion controllers.
They were saying, this is who we are, this is who we're going to be.
They're committing to it. And like, if you wanted to use just a regular controller, they didn't have that. I think they did have one eventually, but they just said, use our old ones. They had it built in. You could just plug
use GameCube controllers. That's
old
right.
GameCube controllers right into the top of the console and go for it. And not just one, but four. Yeah. You could use that thing as a GameCube.
Yeah, the original one. So later models, it lost GameCube compatibility. It was like the way later models, though. It was like the Wii Mini. So it was the ones that came out in the 2010s.
Yeah.
The first 6-7 years, it's like probably 6 years of Wii production, it was a GameCube, and which is amazing in the fact that they were like, okay, we have this fan base. The GameCube only sold 20, maybe 30 million units. They were like, we have this fan base. We're going to make this system that makes the GameCube irrelevant, but adds this total niche package to where it sold 102 million systems. Like Nintendo is so smart when it comes to stuff like that. Like
Yeah.
only they could have pulled it off. And then within a very short period of time, they, like we've talked about before, they took that niche system and basically they made the Wii U, which was just like it was a failure. It only sold like 13 million consoles. But they took this niche system and completely shifted to what is now the Switch.
Mm-hmm.
And like this is what they're doing for the next probably 2 or 3 generations. Like it's just because I would say the NES up through to the GameCube were all the same type of system.
Yeah. I think the big push that Nintendo can do is that kind of beyond the buttons experience that they're trying to offer, which I think they can make it work, and they have to work with good game developers. I mean, but I think it's also interesting is that they can try these things because they sort of have this built-in fan base on the few good games that they always make. That they're like, it's like that if you get a Nintendo system,
which Mario games are you going to get?
You get the Mario games, and you get a few other type games like that. That are just gonna be good.
Well, which begs the question, and really, I think I kind of might know the answer. If Mario wasn't a thing, Nintendo would have failed.
Oh yeah, I mean, but I think that's every system sort of had that. That every system had their sort of their staple games that was like the main like rocket that was propelling them forward, and then they had other stuff that they were just trying and dabbling with
but like it's crazy how they're so okay. I would say Nintendo's was Mario.
Mm-hmm.
I would say Xbox was Halo.
I also say Call of Duty.
Call of Duty
say,
and
general
Halo.
shooters. I would say
shooters specifically.
It just the whole shooter scene was more Xbox than anything else.
I would say PlayStation. It was Crash in the 90s.
Yeah,
but like it was probably platformers.
Yeah, like it was like Crash, Spyro, those kind of games in the 90s, and then PlayStation 2. You had
such a big spectrum.
I think they kept those, and then they were. I feel like they did sports games well early on.
I'd say so,
and then sports games just became ubiquitous across all platforms, but mostly it was held. I think Xbox 360 sort of got in that scene really well, but again, it was.
But it's so interesting. Like I think the point being how since the 80s, Mario continues to be the best selling. I'd say aside from Wii Sports,
mm-hmm.
the best selling everything for Nintendo systems, generation after generation. They just make more Mario games. Yeah. Which is amazing.
Yeah, and they always are good at balancing nostalgia and innovation.
Mm-hmm.
Which again, it's just a testament to what they're doing developing games. But I also think it's interesting that they do have other games that they do really well with. I mean, they have the Pokemon games that are expanding, and I also think it's interesting that they've now come into the Switch and they've merged stuff. It's like before, Mario was their console series and Pokemon mm-hmm. was their handheld series.
Yes.
And now it's one and the same.
Yeah, Pokemon is for sure a console. I actually picked up Pokemon Sword in a Nintendo Switch deal that I snagged. I ended up selling the Switch and just kept the game for free. But and basically we can talk about. This is continuing the Nintendo conversation, but this is more recent. They are still handheld. The Switch Lite is technically now their handheld system.
Yeah,
which is crazy. But it's just a version of their at-home console. So like they're that's where they're so smart. Like they're just genius when it comes to that.
I think everybody's going to be moving towards that because it right back in the day, you didn't provide so you started out where it was just consoles in the home because people were going to arcades and they were like, right now, a game developer didn't really make money on the arcade game as much because they sold the game and the arcade made the money on the
arcade
usage.
Made the money for sure. Yeah, it was simply the initial purchase of the arcade system.
I think there was leasing involved too. Like you had to lease games,
like you could lease out a cabinet or something.
But even then, the experience and the profitability didn't matter on the arcade's performance. It was just because like if a game was leased somewhere, it wasn't like they could really track somebody's cash sales. So it wasn't like they could say we get 1%. They just say this is your lease cost to be able to use our game.
And for the user, the arcade was the draw, not a specific game. So like the draw was being able to go to an arcade to play all these things. Where now a specific game might sell you a system. You know what I'm saying? Yeah,
and so then they broke into the house where they were like, let's get people, and that meant that if there were 100,000 arcades across the U.S. and then maybe more across the nation, across the international sphere of arcades, then you had way more homes. So even if you might sell it for 1/10 of the cost that maybe an arcade game cost to build and then sell to somebody, or I don't even know what an arcade cost to an arcade console setup cost to an arcade itself. I just said arcade too many times. That there was way more households, so you made more sales there. And then they realized that now that they're in everybody's home, how can they keep making more money? All right, so they have more games. So now you have, so they started out, most consoles didn't have 300 games to choose from.
There'd be a handful for each console.
Yeah, and that was all you really needed. And then they were like, let's make more games. And then they said online play, so because they could do online subscription. Now you're getting a monthly payment. They've already paid you for the console. Now they're just paying you more to keep using it in an expanded experience. So it's as we progress, they're just going to find more ways to broaden their revenue streams. That's just how businesses operate. But I think it also will benefit us because where, like one thing I was talking about, I commented in this discussion with some other people, was that the Wii Sports game was also a selling tool for the Wii because people came over to their friend's house like they always did to play video games, and now that's the one friend that had the Wii, which for me I was the one friend who had the Wii. I was an early adopter of the Wii, but even though I was also an early adopter of not using the Wii. But the first thing we did was I'd have 3 other people over, and the 4 of us would be going to town doing bowling and tennis, and it was super fun. And then within 6 months, every single person that had come over to my house to play the Wii had a Wii and was then could do it on their own, and we would. And I think some of that was just strictly because of Wii Sports. Like people weren't like, oh, I'm going to get the Wii so I can play Call of Duty, because if you play Call of Duty on the Wii,
I'm sure it was just awful.
It's not fun. We talked about it. Call of Duty 3 was the worst experience of any Call of Duty I had, and it wasn't because the game sucked. It was because the experience of playing it on a Wii was just miserable. But that's not why the Wii was built, though.
It'd be weird to have to play a shooter with both your arms kind of extended out and not resting. So like if you're holding a controller, like I'm laying back right now and I'm holding this microphone, like I would hold a controller. You can play like this because you need more than just the extension of your wrists to play with the Wiimote and with the nunchuck. Like you had to have your arms, I think, to your elbows available for use, which is weird when you're playing a shooter where you just really want to sit back, get comfortable with your arms and just move your fingers with a shooter. But there wasn't much precision, and you could play it in like where you could, if you just held still, you could still control it like a controller, but it just meant you had to hold still. I also remember playing bowling on Wii Sports by myself, where I was laying down playing it because you could. If you got the right motion.
Well, I just had my couch where my right arm was hanging down off the side of the couch.
Oh, yeah.
So I just bowled that way.
I
didn't need to be upright, but I definitely think that was just, the Wii Sports experience was just so weird because everybody's played party games. Like people have played Mario Party. People have played, like Super Smash Brothers. I'm trying to think of what party games were there on not Nintendo consoles.
There was, there weren't a lot. So
because you could say like any kind of like arcade style racing game, like you had like the Crash Team Racing could be more a party game.
Yeah, that would have been arcade style. So Sony PlayStation came out with, nuts! I can't believe I can't remember this. It started with the PlayStation 3. It was trying to be their version of Super Smash Bros. PlayStation All Stars, I want to say it was called. It flopped pretty bad.
Oh yeah, didn't it have like superheroes, and it had like Capcom,
So
Street Fighter and stuff. Characters in it.
It was a bunch of PlayStation, or I should say, it was a bunch of Sony Interactive owned characters.
Mm-hmm.
And like with like the dude from God of War, Kratos, and it had like Jack and Dexter. Like it had a lot of the stuff that Sony Interactive Studios owned or partnered with.
Mm-hmm.
But it flopped so bad. It just did not go well.
Yeah,
there weren't many party games, and maybe that's where Nintendo's super smart in the sense of they have 3 or 4 incredible franchises. You got Zelda, Pokemon, Mario. You have these incredible franchises where they say, okay, let's party these characters together and have that even be another extension of us.
Yeah. And I think that's also one that's interesting about Nintendo, the Nintendo games, like the games that they make, that if you take the rough formula of their game and try to apply it any other way, it does not work. It's weird.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you take a shooter game and you kind of hit the basics of it, you hit a good variety of weapons, you have a good variety of enemies, and a progressive kind of storyline where you're kind of being challenged and you're growing in your kind of your skills in the game. Like there's tons of shooter games that you can just kind of pick up and play.
Yeah.
Some have better staying power than the others, but there's none where you just pick it up and you're like, this is just wrong, unless it was a badly developed game on its face. But you could throw a lot of money in a game that's trying to be like Super Smash Brothers, and it's just not going to be the same, because if you look at the game, it's sort of ridiculous that it's so popular.
Yeah, because it's not very deep.
Yeah.
But it again, they have their fan bases. I think the first Smash Bros was for the N64.
Yeah.
So like you have your fan base that is just so committed. And I think because if you look at the speedrunning community,
mm-hmm.
Nintendo games are run just more than other games. And like the best speedrunning record is for Super Mario Bros. So Nintendo just has this woven itself into like the world of video games, to where it is the foundation basically of video games. So I feel like, man, they just have these fans and they have their people that will only ever do what it is they have for them. They will only ever take in what they're putting out.
Yeah, and I do think it is, and like you think about how like the Wii was just so not competitive, and it was edgy.
It was so not
safe.
Nintendo. It was like it's crazy how non-Nintendo it was, but it was still also
very
exactly Nintendo. Like those games just weren't weren't what we had seen from Nintendo for the previous 5 generations. But all of a sudden it becomes it all of a sudden forms, I guess, what Nintendo is today, which is the like even more portable, more user friendly, more family focused, but also more hardcore than they've ever been video game company, which is amazing. If Sony or Microsoft decided to go off the rails and completely change their formula, I feel like they would no longer exist within 1 or 2 generations. But Nintendo changed their formula and is now stronger than ever.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is they take the risk, and they're willing to take the risk, which is, again, that's one thing that is disappointing about, because basically you have Sony and Xbox in the same time, like with the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360, we're both kind of we're competing over the same land in the video game space of the more,
that's correct,
like older teenager, like
hardcore gamer,
or like more competitive, more
shooter
or just like fighter or like RPG driving games. Like they were, and so again they had a lot of crossover where they're both just end up, you can get the same game for both consoles, and it was just a matter of which one you were bought into. So they're trying to get you with exclusives.
They were, I mean, Xbox 360 and PS3 that had third-party games that were the same game, literally were the same game.
Yeah, like they offered very little difference in experience.
There was such little difference in the actual game that it did literally come down to being the fanboy of one or the other.
Yeah, and one thing I think that they could have done, and I think we only had like one or two instances where it did happen, and it didn't really go anywhere in a market trend, was that the games then separated themselves out on the online experience. I mean, like that was like PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 were all about online at that point. That's the big push they're trying to make, which was a wise push.
Yeah, really, HD gaming and online were all that they were. Like
But you couldn't do any crossover. So if you had a PS3 and I had an Xbox 360, which actually was the case, we couldn't play with each other on the same games because there was no cross support for online in that way. Right. Now that's becoming a thing, which is cool. I mean, not that really affects me anymore because I don't really play online gaming. But,
right. I did you ever get into online gaming?
Oh yeah. I mean, I played online for
PC or for Xbox.
Xbox. I mean, all of like every Halo thing I was doing, I was playing online.
Oh yeah. I never got really into online gaming.
I was into like Halo. I was into some Call of Duty. Call of Duty got really annoying.
I would say that Xbox 360 won. So, PS3 won in, I would say, power and overall sales. I think the Xbox 360 won in online gaming. Like, it was more streamlined. It was a paid service, but it was a better service.
Yeah.
Dedicated servers. Like, you just had, I think it was probably a better community in the sense of playing the game. There was, with more people playing online, you have more toxic people. Most of them being like the kids that were playing. Yeah. But it just had a better service.
Yeah, I do laugh about, like, I mean, it not this is somewhat a joke, so nobody get too offended by this, but like the kids today being, so upset about kids being mean to them online. I'm like, man, you don't even know. Yeah. You just got to get on a Call of Duty chat room, like, in the lobby, and just have your mic on and
kids just screaming
so many profanities, and they would just tear into you, and then they have no idea who you are. They didn't care,
right?
And most of the time you could laugh it off, but at the same time, like they just berate you. Yeah. And like I know plenty of people who would, not like I didn't know them, but you'd be in that environment, and they like three kids who are all friends together, and they're just tearing into somebody who's like on their team, and the person would just quit the lobby and go somewhere else because they couldn't handle it, and it was such a bizarre time. And then you had the Wii, where like the online experience, you could play online.
It was just like
but you couldn't. It was just random people, and there was no interaction other than playing. Yeah, the game.
It was just like your Wii. Your avatars were just like walk around and say and wave at each other in a very friendly way.
Yeah, but I think there was a funny, like I didn't play too much online. I played some games on Wii online, but it was a terrible experience. So like it was only games that were popular enough to have enough people on there.
Right.
But there still was ways to like troll people and to try to egg people on. Just like there's just using character movements and stuff, doing a lot of squatting and stuff. I just remember that, like, you can make somebody mad just by like making your character squat up and down at somebody.
Dude, the earlier, and so I think that generation, the Wii, PS3, Xbox 360, that was the generation that really adopted online gaming well.
Yeah.
So like obviously with Xbox and PS2 you could go online, but the communities weren't as strong, and the connections literally weren't as strong either.
They were much more about the game's online experience.
The competitiveness of playing the games online.
Yeah, because like the Xbox, like with Halo 2 online, like it wasn't something that was, the console wasn't the reason the online was good, is because Bungie, who made Halo 2, made it good.
And
which is just something that people had to put the effort in as developers to make it work, and people had to be on the game. Like you can still get onto Halo 2 and play online, and there'll be a few people there.
But I'll tell you what, if I recall Halo 2 online, the community for that game was, well, number one, it was older. Like it wasn't filled with a bunch of 8, 9, 10, 11-year-olds. Like it was older, it was more competitive, and it was like, I mean, it was almost religious to Halo 2 especially was like religious to those people, to those guys.
Yeah.
And playing it online competitively, like there was no money in it, not much money in it at the time, but it was a very seriously taken game. Whereas I would say most, if not all, of the console online games that are played pretty consistently are watered down in some way with whether it's kids or whether it's people that aren't competitive gamers or hardcore gamers. But I think that's where I would say the landscape of video games has gone since the, I would say PS2 and Xbox and GameCube, that generation started in some way the casual gamer, whereas then the following generation with the Wii specifically opened the casual game market, just opened the floodgates up.
Well, I would change that, not so much the word casual gamer, because I think there was a lot of casual gaming before that. I think I would say the I don't know the best way, the rewardless games. Games games offer no reward outside of the game being something you spent time on and you smiled while playing.
For sure.
Like if you think about more casual, like less aggressive games that were arcade games, whatever, there were still scores and there were still losing.
Sure. So yeah,
it wasn't as big of a deal.
Yeah, and I'd say the last generation, which is crazy to think that the Wii was just like it was last generation, but like
it's like a generation and a half.
Yeah,
it's
weird. Yeah, and we're about 9 months away from a brand new generation.
Yeah,
but that generation, especially the PS3, 360, and Wii, you're right. What word did you just use?
Rewardless.
Yeah, there all of a sudden there were so many rewardless games, and it was just like it was the games like we've talked about that you don't die on them. You don't have to like start at the beginning anymore. Like that gen really started it to the point where now you can see how the online communities, that is now a thing, like where it's people that just aren't necessarily playing it competitively, but they're playing it for whatever reason that they might have. We'll see what this does to video games. Like, do we go back to the competitive hardcore gaming scene, or does it continue to become more and more rewardless?
I think we'll just have more divergence in the online community, because I think because you're gonna have in all the more competitive games, you're gonna have more of a push to what Google is trying to do with the Stadia stuff, where it's gonna be about the game and not about the console. I think the idea of consoles is gonna break down into the point where consoles don't matter anymore. I think that's a better future to be in.
I think that consoles. So, I believe that this generation was a brand new generation. There was nothing groundbreaking.
Oh no!
From my perspective, it like graphics just got a 0.5 upgrade, and this coming generation will just be another 0.5 upgrade because people don't have 8K TVs. We're still a couple years away from 8K TVs being normal. Not much is streamed in 4K. So like, I feel like the generations before. So okay, let's say that the generation of PlayStation 1 and N64 and Sega Saturn brought 64-bit gaming. Mm-hmm. I want to say that was 64. Yeah, N64. 64-bit gaming. I would say the next generation brought online gaming as well as updated graphics, which would be like the PS2, Xbox. The next gen, the PS3, Xbox 360, brought HD gaming and full online capability. This generation, the PS4, the Switch, and the Xbox One just brought that same thing, HD gaming and online capability, with slightly better graphics.
Yeah,
but like there was nothing groundbreaking about this generation. I don't know what could be groundbreaking about next generation either.
Again, I honestly think that anything that all the more rewardless / just like fill your time games are gonna get pushed to your phone. That's where it's going to happen. Yeah. That's where you can already see that with like Clash of Clans was really big for a while. I mean, we got into Clash of Clans. That was a fun time.
We rode the wave, I think, until the wave began to just.
There's still a lot of people who play.
There's still a bunch, and it's still so. Now it's almost more competitive. That where it used to be more casual, it's more competitive now.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of that, and then but I think there is a really hyper competitive market too, where you have like Overwatch and you have League of Legends and you have those kind of things where they are like renting out huge stadiums and you have millions of people tuning in to live streams of these games, and like these people who there's people who have professional gaming careers where, for a while professional gaming, you can make enough money to live in an apartment, like a house that you're renting with the team, and like feed yourselves, have fun, maybe pay off your student debt if you're if you were in college.
It was like being a like commercial, like local commercial level actor.
Yeah,
it was just like,
yeah, it was fun, and you got to do what you wanted to do, and you had the freedom, but it wasn't like you were a big. But now there's these people are being paid a lot of money, and they have sponsors like especially in the Asian markets. I mean, you can see these guys who are like on billboards in main towns, and you can see not only just like 20-year-olds who are into gaming wearing like t-shirts and hoodies and stuff with the team logos, but you can see adults that they have adult community following this stuff. It's crazy. It's definitely bizarre, but I think that it'll just keep breaking down where it's going to be about the games and not about the consoles. And
I agree with that.
And I could easily see where either just because all these other smart devices are going to be so powerful, because as technology improves, we'll be able to kind of meet those needs. Yeah, that you won't have to. You can do like what they have with the Stadia, where you're just buying a controller and it hooks up to your TV, and you're streaming the game in from where they have a giant server farm that's maintaining all the actual computing power. You're just giving input and experiencing those inputs on screen.
I think we're about a generation away from that infrastructure. Like I think that's the future for sure. I think console gaming will have to end, because of how technology with televisions and servers and streaming is just going to pass it. Because the issue with consoles, so like my PS4 right now is technology from 6 years ago. Yeah. And like that's just not, like that can't sustain itself generation after generation after generation, because technology is moving way too quickly nowadays. Yeah. And it's passing it up way too fast.
But we saw this as this trend is because it's so the media entertainment that we've experienced as a society that did not require any input from us always advanced first. So watching stuff, TV happened first, where that was when like cable came in, and we had cable, and then they didn't really have video games, and then they were like but you had arcades, and then you come into the console was birthed out of the fact that the VHS came out, and you could experience a VHS where you could be watching movies that normally you had to go to the theaters for, and you could record TV shows and experience them later. So that happened in the late 70s, and it became pretty popular into the 80s. And then that's when in the 80s is when consoles came out, and then DVD players came out and DVD content, and then consoles followed that. And that's sort of where we've been. But now that and then mobile gaming sort of birthed a little bit, but now it's going to be becoming more and more popular as the technology is there for us to be able to take the gaming with us. That's why the Switch is now, like, because we could start watching videos on our phone, they're like, well, why don't we make the games go on with you? So they did with mobile gaming, but the power wasn't there to offer the full gaming experience. Those were like mini games basically. But for true console gaming, you had to get this full experience in, and then that's what they're doing now. And then now people are like, well, you're streaming everything you're watching now. Like nobody like downloads video content anymore. Nobody rents. I mean, Redbox still exists for stuff that is just came out and isn't on streaming services yet.
But it's just but
it's holding on by a thread because Amazon offers you to be able to rent it, and you don't have to get in your car and drive to your closest gas station or mall or wherever that has a Redbox to be able to do that. You can just do it there. Maybe it costs $1 more, but in your mind you're like, well,
it's
spent $1 in gas.
Convenience, yeah, we'll see what happens, where these things go. We're going to keep doing this podcast even as the next generation, I'm sure, begins. But like,
and we still won't adopt that because we're just too old.
We're just too old. Yeah. So I had, and we can definitely talk about this maybe next episode about like what I do with GameStop and the store credit and whatnot. I don't know if I want to get that we have a good buddy named Keith that would probably not want me to talk about that on the airwaves, but
He wants to keep that under wraps.
But basically, so I only got like one more minute, but I had this plan of basically getting enough store credit to have the next generation system paid for. But as we've done this podcast and as I've thought through it more, there's no reason for me to buy that out the gate, because I still like, number one, I still like older games more and still play older games more. I don't play video games as much anymore, but when I do, I play PS1 and PS3 games, and then like some really old stuff. So there's just no reason right now to even purchase the next gen when it comes out in December.
And the first release of every console is always blown. Like,
yeah, there's always glitches too.
I remember when the 360 came out and you could buy it, but you had to pay for controllers and you had to pay for the hard drive storage on it.
Right.
Separate. And then if you waited 6 months, then you got all that bundled for the same price as just the core console.
Correct.
And those core consoles blew up within 3 months. They all got the red ring of death.
They all like it's always the second I don't know, manufacturing of that console fixes
second release
fixes so many of the glitches.
Yeah. Actually, we should do a whole podcast on the red ring of death.
Oh my goodness, dude. I'd love to do the red ring of death. I would love, okay, so because basically what happened with that generation, again, I only have like 30 seconds now, but that was actually an awful generation to start with, because all three of the launches were complete failures in the sense of you couldn't find a Wii anywhere. No one was selling. There was a huge shortage of Wii.
Yeah.
No one had it. Half of the Xbox 360s that were purchased had a red ring of death, and the PS3 was $600. So it was stupidly overpriced for that time period.
Yeah.
So like, we'll have to talk about like, and because that's when both of us were teenagers and like we were
reliant on our parents.
Yeah, that was the mecca in regards to time for us for video games. We were entering our early to mid teenage years. So we'll have to talk about that maybe next episode. But yeah, this has been the Before Word podcast, where video games are fun and we love to talk about them.
Well, one day maybe not talk about video games, but I don't know when that's going to happen.
Yeah. We're still like, it's still about us growing up, and but it's just been video games for the first 4 or 5 episodes. So we'll see where the trends continue.
All right. See you next week. God bless America.
God bless America.